محمد وآل محمد صلوات. قید تنہائی میں دم گھٹنے لگا ہے میرا، آ کے سینے سے لگاؤ بابا. قید تنہائی میں دم گھٹنے لگا ہے میرا، آ کے سینے سے لگاؤ بابا. میں اندھیرے میں اکیلی نہ مر جاؤں کہیں، مجھ کو مرنے سے بچاؤ بابا. قید تنہائی میں دم گھٹنے لگا ہے بابا. قید تنہائی میں دم گھٹنے لگا ہے میرا، آ کے سینے سے لگاؤ بابا. میں تیری یاد میں دن رات یوں تڑپتی تھی، جیسے پنجرے میں کوئی گھائل پڑا ہو پنچھی. موت کا خوف ہے سناٹا ہے ویرانی ہے، میری امداد کو آؤ بابا. قید تنہائی میں دم گھٹنے لگا ہے میرا، آ کے سینے سے لگاؤ بابا. مجھ کو عادت ہے تیرے سینے پہ مجھ کو عادت ہے تیرے سینے پہ سر رکھنے کی، چین کی نیند بھلا کیسے زمیں پر آئے. قید خانے میں تو پڑتی ہے بلا کی گرمی، اپنی گودی میں سلاؤ بابا. قید تنہائی میں دم گھٹنے لگا ہے میرا، آ کے سینے سے لگاؤ بابا. میرے دادا نے رہا کتنے کیے تھے قیدی، اس کی پوتی ہوں مگر قید میں مجبور ہوں میں. نام لے کے تیرا رونے نہیں دیتا ظالم، اب میری قید چھڑاؤ بابا. قید تنہائی میں دم گھٹنے لگا ہے میرا، آ کے سینے سے لگاؤ بابا. پھپھیوں کے بھی بندھے ہاتھ پسے گردن ہیں، وہ بھلا کیسے میری آنکھوں سے آنسو پوچھیں، بے سہارا ہوں یتیمی کا کٹھن موسم ہے، اپنی صورت تو دکھاؤ بابا، قید تنہائی میں دم گھٹنے لگا ہے میرا، آ کے سینے سے لگاؤ بابا، یاد بے شیر کی آتی ہے مجھے شام و سحر، اس کا جلتا ہوا جھولا بھی نظر آتا ہے، مجھے مل جاؤ میرے مرنے سے پہلے آ کر، ساتھ اکبر کو بھی لاؤ بابا، قید تنہائی میں دم گھٹنے لگا ہے میرا، آ کے سینے سے لگاؤ بابا، میں اندھیرے میں اکیلی نہ مر جاؤں کہیں، مجھ کو مرنے سے بچاؤ بابا، قید تنہائی میں دم گھٹنے لگا ہے میرا، آ کے سینے سے لگاؤ بابا، بر محمد وآل محمد صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم۔
رحم الله من قرأ سورة المباركة الفاتحة. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وفوض أمري إلى الله إن الله بصير بالعباد ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل ونعم المولى ونعم النصير. والصلاة والسلام والتحية والإكرام على الرسول المسدد المصطفى الأمجد المحمود الأحمد الذي سمي في السماء بأحمد وفي الأرض بأبي القاسم محمد، وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين المنتجبين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. وقل رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري وأحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. أما بعد، قال الله تبارك وتعالى في كتاب الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اقرأ باسم ربك الذي خلق. صدق الله العلي العظيم. زينوا مجالسكم بالصلوات على محمد وآل محمد. For the love of Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen, صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. And for the hastening of the reappearance of Imam Sahib al-Asr al-Zaman, sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad wa ala. My respected elders, brothers and sisters in Iman, salamun alaikum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Question. What's the proof of the existence of God? Keep that question in the back of your mind, inshallah we'll return to it. In the previous nights we've been discussing a few things. We began with a discussion of ta'arrub ba'd al-hijrah as one of the major sins. And it was this idea that I leave a place where I am able to practice my faith and where I am adhering to the wajibat and refraining, staying away from the muharramat, and I go to a place where I am no longer able to practice. In a state where I no longer stay away from haram, and I start being laxed on those things that I'm supposed to do. So for example, before I used to pray, I migrated, I no longer pray. I used to fast before, I migrated, I no longer fast anymore. Then we said that there is an exception to this clause that the Ahlul Bayt have told us. The exception is if your life is on the line. If your life is on the line, you're still allowed to make the migration, but only to the extent that it saves your life. Therefore, we come forward and we realize that migrating back is not an option for many. If I've grown up here, if I've been born and raised here, this is my homeland. Where am I going to go back to? I have no place to go back to. This is my home. And for many of us who have been born and raised in this part of the world, this is home. And what's beautiful about this country is the fact that it gives us many freedoms that I cannot enjoy in other parts of the world. For example, I can have a majlis here of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. Try doing that in some other quote-unquote Muslim countries. Try, for example, to get citizenship in some other quote-unquote Muslim countries. Try actually being an active member of society in some quote-unquote Muslim countries. I thought we were talking about justice and equity and fairness. But when we come to Western countries, many times we find that we find more Islam than quote-unquote Muslim countries. Why is that? How is that? We must examine this. If you look at the history of the United States, you'll remember the famous Congressman Keith Ellison, who was the Muslim congressman from Minnesota. When he went and when he got elected, he said that normally people take an oath. You're allowed to take an oath on whatever you want. Typically people use the Bible. When he came forward, he says, I don't believe in the Bible. I'm not a Christian. I'm a Muslim. He says, therefore I want to give oath on the Quran. They said, very well, we will accommodate you. We will make sure that we get a Quran for you. But do you know which Quran they got him? They went to the Library of Congress, the largest library in the world in Washington, D.C., and they went to a library and they went to a book that was over 200 years old that belonged to Thomas Jefferson himself. Meaning Thomas Jefferson was reading the Quran. In fact, he was reading many world texts. That means the foundation of the country that you and I live in, it has its principles that are worldly, that are of faith, that are of even Islam, one may argue. You will notice in the library of Thomas Jefferson, you will find many books that are, for example, many versions of the Bible. You will find the Quran there, you will find other texts. That means that in the substance of this nation that we live in, it's not contradictory to our faith necessarily. Yes, today we are facing some challenges. For today we have some challenges on the front with bigotry, Islamophobia. All of these things are there. But we need to do our job to remind society that it wasn't always like this. You may not know this, but in the early founding fathers of the United States of America, Thomas Jefferson and the likes, George Washington and the likes, there was a debate in the 1700s about whether a Muslim can be the president of the United States or not. You know, Islamophobia has gotten to this extent in America today, that it's gotten to the point that this is one thing that bilaterally people, whether they're Democrat or Republican, whatever their view is, they agree that somebody who's a Muslim, we need to be cautious about them being president. There have been numerous surveys on this. But what did the founding fathers of America say? When they came to this issue, they had a long debate on this, and they all agreed and they all concurred that if a Muslim is elected president of the United States, he has the absolute right to be elected. There's no problem. Because the separation of church and state exists. Therefore, you and I must understand there are beautiful aspects of society here. There's also side effects of society here. We're going to talk about this a bit today and especially tomorrow. When I come forward and take a medication, my doctor prescribes me a medication. Say for example, cholesterol medication, some type of medication. That medication will help me in terms of my ailment. For cholesterol, it may help me there. But they'll often say that there is a side effect to this. It may cause me a headache, fatigue, tiredness, so many different things. I still take it so that I can be cured of this one issue. Not only physically we have side effects, society has side effects. And we'll discuss this in detail. When we come forward to looking at the conversation about the future of our next generation, where are we going? Will we have strong, vibrant communities in the next 5, 10, 15, 20, 100 years from now? We need to start planning for this. And one of the things that we need to look at when we look at the future of our communities is we must address the challenges of our time. We must address the challenges not only of the time, but also of the space in which we exist. Remember these two words, time and space. It will come up again. The idea being that we live in a place where, for example, if I want to have a majlis at my house, or we want to have a majlis here, or any Husseini or Imam Barga, there's two things you have to look at. People will ask you, what's the address and what's the time? Zaman and Makan. What's the time and what's the space? Otherwise, they won't know where to be. We need to look at where are we and what's the issue. Because I tell you, if I go to Pakistan, for example, what's a major issue that arises on the TVs in Pakistan with respect to religion? For example, one issue that arises is Mawla Ali Afzal or are the other prophets Afzal? Who's higher? Why does this issue arise? The idea being, it's a big debate. Because when you look at the population of a country like Pakistan, the majority of the people there are already Muslim. Therefore, they're not debating about what is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or Rasulullah. If I go to a country like Iran, which is upwards of 95% monolithic Shia, are they going to debate about who was the Khalifa after Rasulullah? They're not going to debate about that because they know it's clear. Khalifatuhu bila fasl, they already agree. They're not going to debate about that. The dynamics in Iraq are different. In Iraq you have, for example, you have Sunni, Shia, Kurds, you have different groups. In our society, in our environment, what is the challenge that we're facing? We tell many of our youth, and I'm talking globally, I'm talking about between Europe, between America, between Canada, the West in general. Many times I see, for example, many of our parents, many of our elders, they recommend that people get highly educated. And it's a beautiful thing. Our elders have not only said this, the ulama have said this. Sayyid Sistani has written a letter of advice to some youth. I highly recommend you read this. In this letter, he has told the youth who asked him for advice, college students, that if you can do something, Sayyid Sistani says, try to specialize in something. For example, you want to go into medicine, specialize in medicine. If you want to go into engineering, specialize in engineering. Economics, psychology, media, journalism. Whatever field you pick, specialize in there, try to go to the top. He further says that why is it that we, for example, just absorb knowledge and information? Why do we not also contribute? And he encouraged the youth, write books, write textbooks. If the name on the textbook is not a Muslim name, you produce a textbook that other people can benefit from. We must do this. Education caliber is very important, and we'll get to this in a moment. But I'm addressing a very important issue. I'm telling you that with my hand on my heart and humility, between my travels, wherever Ahlul Bayt have taken me, we're seeing a problem, a phenomenon that's arising. Parents say, go to med school, become a doctor. Beautiful, wonderful. I'm with you 100% till here. I'm working on my PhD myself. I encourage education. Highly recommend it. But here's the problem. They go 4 years undergrad to another remote town, remote city. Sometimes there's community there, sometimes there's not. And sometimes there's burdens and other challenges. Undergrad, bachelor's degree. Very good, alhamdulillah, that's finished. Get admission into med school. 4 more years. 8 years, yeah? After that, residency. 3 years minimum, right? Sometimes 4, sometimes 5, surgery more. After 4 plus 4 plus 3, 11 years, when that child is coming back to the family, those parents are realizing that's not the same child that I sent to med school. That's not the same child I sent to become a doctor. So the parents are now telling me, my child used to go to madrasa first. My child used to go to madrasa, Husseiniya, Imam Barga, masjid, namaz, everything. Now I tell them to go to the masjid, they're saying, I don't have time for this. I have other things on my plate. I have work, I have social obligations. This is not a priority anymore to me. And first of all, what's the proof of this? These are real issues facing our communities globally. Because in Pakistan or in Iran, those aren't main issues. You don't debate the existence of God. Maybe some people do on private circles, but it's not happening on national television. Here, the debate doesn't start with Amir al-Mu'mineen in America. They may not even know who Ali ibn Abi Talib is when I go to the college and the university. They may not even be debating about Rasulullah. The issue is about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala first and foremost. Therefore, if we want to build a building, if we want to build infrastructure, the first thing that a civil engineer will come and look at is, if I want to build a building, they will say, make sure that the foundation is strong. Because the foundation is that substance upon which the building is built. We as followers of the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, we were supposed to be and are supposed to be the foremost in ilm. The two major issues that we are facing globally is many of our followers of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam are saying, number one, prove to me the existence of God. And number two, tell me what's the benefit of religion. Why do I need religion? We'll address that tomorrow, inshallah. Today I want to look at this concept. Because we understand that everything that we do has to have dalil. In Islam, we have, in our belief system, you have usuluddin and furuuddin. Usuluddin are those things that are with your aqidah, your belief system. Tawheed, adala, nubuwa, imama, qiyamah. Then there's furuuddin. The things that, for example, namaz, roza, hajj, zakat, khums, amr bil ma'ruf, nahi anil munkar, tawalla, tabara, these things, yes? With respect to usuluddin, I cannot do taqleed in usuluddin. I cannot say that I follow Ayatullah Sistani or Ayatullah XYZ in the issue of usul. I can do it in furu. I can do it in namaz, roza, hajj, zakat. I can say I did taqleed there. But in usul, I have to have my own dalil. I have to have my own belief. I have to have my own proof as to why I believe what I believe. Tawheed, why do I believe there's one God? Why do I believe in adala of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the justice of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Why do I believe in nubuwa, the prophethood, imama, the guardianship, vicegerency? Why do I believe in the concept of qiyamah? Each person has to have their own dalil. And I cannot say that I followed this marja or that marja. Yes, you can get details and information on what we believe from the scholars, but on Yawm al-Qiyamah we're on our own. Therefore, these are some of the most pertinent issues. Because I tell you, if you look at and read what's going on in our society today, there are very famous atheists who are going around saying that there's no God, there's no God, there's no proof, there's no evidence. And do you know some of their followers, their strongest followers, are from Shia, Sayyid, Rizvi backgrounds? You ask yourself, how did this happen? Followers of the Ahlul Bayt, people who come from the household of the Ahlul Bayt, they're saying we no longer believe. I mentioned the previous 2 nights. What price has been paid so you and I can believe in Islam today? So we have our iman. I told you about the history of Baghdad. The walls would not be built until blood was drained in the cement. Heavy prices have been paid. It's a very sad light. Imagine if our imam comes and sees this scenario, where the followers no longer believe. And you know what's sometimes more challenging than atheism? Agnosticism. Agnosticism is this idea of indifference. There is a God, there isn't a God, I don't care, I don't mind. I don't have time to be bothered with this. You know why that's more difficult? Because many times that goes undiagnosed. The person who's an atheist is saying, I don't believe. The agnostic saying, I'm not sure, maybe, maybe not. I don't have time for this. I have bigger things to do in my life. Many times the usul foundation has not been strong and has not been set strong. Therefore, number one, I want to look at tonight in the brief moments that we have together. What is knowledge and what's the importance of knowledge in Islam? What have the Ahlul Bayt said about this concept? What does Islam say about this concept? What are some traditions of the Holy Prophet with respect to knowledge and how this relates to our identity as followers of the Ahlul Bayt? How is it that Muslims used to be on top of the world in one era and no longer are in terms of knowledge? What is the proof in the existence of God? From philosophy, from science. Is there a way to prove it or is it not? Is it just something that we're guessing on? And how is it that Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam's existence proves the existence of God to us? And how he proved this on the plains of Karbala. This is what I hope to look at in the brief moments that we have together, inshallah. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. as followers of Bab-e Madinatul Ilm, as followers of the gate of the city of knowledge, as in Amir al-Mu'mineen, you and I would think that we would be at the forefront of knowledge and ilm. But what ilm and what knowledge are we talking about? We don't need and we're not interested in knowledge that is just simply without the ma'rifah of Allah and the Ahlul Bayt. Meaning, we want our next generation to rise, become doctors, become lawyers, become engineers, become economists, become everything, but with the love of the Ahlul Bayt and with Islam in their hearts at the same time. Not in the absence of it. Otherwise, this would fall into the idea of ta'arrub ba'd al-hijrah that I mentioned. That this is, how does ta'arrub ba'd al-hijrah, that is migrating from one land to the other, become equivalent to shirk? This is what it is. It is that I have equated wealth, for example, or I have equated some other concept such as safety or security over Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's why it becomes a problem. Therefore, we need accomplished people who also have Islam and Iman in their hearts. Knowledge. I want to share, there was a very famous journal published in Iraq. This journal would be published every month. In this journal, they would have some calligraphy that is on the cover of this. Sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. There was some calligraphy, calligraphy. There was some artwork that was on the cover of this journal. It was an ilm journal, a knowledge journal. On the front, on the center was the verse I recited at the beginning. Iqra. Surah Alaq, the first revelation. Read in the name of your Lord who created. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's first revelation to Rasulullah. Read in the middle, right in the middle. On the sides, on the corners were 4 interesting ahadiths. Please bear this in mind. I will be using this in the rest of the lecture, inshallah. The first tradition was talabul ilm faridatun ala kulli muslim wa muslima. To obtain knowledge is an obligation amongst every Muslim and Muslimah. The ulama have said the narration comes with Muslim and with Muslim wa Muslima. But the experts in Arabic say Muslim includes male and female. It's like saying mankind. It is like knowledge is a farida, an obligation amongst all mankind, obtaining knowledge. It includes both genders. But in other traditions it says explicitly, talabul ilm faridatun ala kulli muslim wa muslima. Obtaining knowledge is an obligation, a requirement amongst all women and men in Islam. Obligation, number 1. First one that was in the corner of this magazine, this journal. Number 2. So therefore the first one tells us it's not gender. It's not just men have to get educated or just women, both genders. The second was utlubul ilm min al-mahdi ila al-lahd. Obtain knowledge from the cradle until the grave. That means that it's not time bound either. That means every moment in my life I must be learning. I must be understanding. I must be learning and learning and learning. It's part of being a Muslim. I must be learning from cradle to grave. Sometimes some people say degree is just the starting point. Sometimes people get 1 degree, 2 degrees and they stop learning. Would you imagine for a moment that I went to the gym when I'm in college? I worked out for 4 years. I become 40, I become 45, I become 50. Someone says, you should work out. My doctor tells me, work out, diet, exercise. On a side note, I've met many physicians on my travels and they'll say, if we could give 1 prescription, and this is also in many surveys that have been done, if there's 1 prescription pill that we could prescribe and put in a pill form, the silver bullet to help humanity would be diet and exercise. It'll change your life. We all know we're supposed to do it, but we don't do it. But with this issue, if I told you that I'm working out, but I worked out, and then you tell me I need to work out, you need to work out, you're getting out of shape. Oh, I said, I worked out a lot in college. I worked out a lot in high school. What benefit will that do me now? The idea is I must continuously be working out, diet, exercise, so I can be healthy. The same way our physical body needs diet and exercise, our mental body needs this workout. It needs to have ilm, it has to have knowledge. Islam's telling me, utlub al-ilm min al-mahdi ila al-lahd. Second tradition. Third tradition, utlub al-ilm walau kana bis-sin. Obtain knowledge even if you have to go to China. China, even still it's a long flight. At that time it was even more brutal. It was very difficult to get to China. Rasulullah saying, it's not time bound, it's not even space bound. Meaning, I don't have to just look at where it is. Wherever knowledge is, I need to go. The fourth tradition says, obtain knowledge. Knowledge, ilm, is the lost property of a mu'min. They should obtain it from wherever they get it. Amazing. Four traditions. They were on the corners of this journal. In the middle was the Quranic verse. You know, this artwork was on the back behind the editor of the journal in his office. It was behind him on the journal's, the editor's office, behind his desk. A German researcher came and visited him in Iraq. He said, can you tell me what is this artwork that's behind your desk? Can you explain it to me? Can I understand what's going on here? He said, yes, this is the calligraphy that we have, that's the cover of the journal. He says, what is it? He said, what does it say? He says, in the middle is a verse of the Quran, our holiest book. So what does it say? It says, read. It's the first revelation. It's very interesting. He says, what else does it say? It says the other corner, each corner, it has one tradition of the Holy Prophet. So what does it say? He says the first one says that obtaining knowledge is an obligation amongst every male and female Muslim. Very interesting. Okay. He said, what does the rest say? He says, it further says that obtain knowledge from the cradle to the grave. Very interesting. Wow. So what else does it say? It says obtain knowledge even if you have to go to China. Wow. Interesting. He says, what else does it say? It says, obtain knowledge, knowledge is the lost property of a mu'min, obtain it from wherever you can, even if it's from a non-Muslim. He said, really? I am shocked, I am baffled, I am astonished that despite this verse and these four traditions, Muslims are not leading the world in knowledge and education. I'm baffled. How? But the question which arises, was it always like this? It was not always like this. If you read the history of Muslims, from 800 AD to 1100 AD, the leading scientific development in the whole world was coming from Islamic nations, in particular Iraq, in particular Baghdad. This is where we got, for example, algebra, chemistry, many things. The first book on algebra was a book called Kitab al-Jabr wal-Muqabil by Muhammad al-Khawarizmi. Algebra comes from the name of this book, Kitab al-Jabr wal-Muqabil. Algebra. Do you know further than this? Do you know why we solve for x? You know, 3x equals 6. What's x? 2. That x, why not solve for a? Why not solve for b? Why solve for x? When Muhammad al-Khawarizmi wrote this book, Kitab al-Jabr wal-Muqabil, it was an applied business mathematics book. It was for business purposes. It was an applied mathematics book. He wrote paragraphs. You know how you have word problems? It was paragraphs. There were no equations in that book. It was all paragraphs. So whenever he wanted to say 3 times a thing is equal to 6, he would use the Arabic word for thing. The Arabic word for thing was shay. 3 times shay equals 6. When these books were then found by the Greeks, they said, we don't have the word shay in our language. We must do something. So they took the Arabic word shay thing and they converted it to their Greek alphabet. What's the closest that they found in their language to shay? Chi. The Greek letter chi. You know the chi-squared statistics you do in college or in high school? Chi. They said we have chi. When these books from Greek were then translated into Latin, in Latin they said we don't have chi in Latin, it's a Greek alphabet letter. What should we do? They turned chi into x. We sometimes don't know where that x came from. It came from Muslim societies and Muslim civilizations. By the way, what does our world run on today? Our world, Google, which is the most sought after company to work for in America today, Harvard Business. Many people would first always go straight to Wall Street after graduating from Harvard Business. Now people are going westward. Do you know what Google runs on what? It runs on an algorithm. Do you know where algorithm comes from? Algorithm, which is a repeating process in computer science, algorithm is a direct Latinization of the name Khawarizmi. How they got there, I don't know. That's what the root of it. The idea was Islam was doing so much for society for at least 300 years. But what happened? We're living in a world as Muslims where we're constantly saying, we used to be great, we were great, we were great. But why are we not great today? And if we're constantly looking in the rear view mirror, we can't look forward. Our next generation needs to be that next generation which gives rise to that ancient greatness again. That has love of Ahlul Bayt and Islam in their hearts, and also at the foremost of science and mathematics and physics and chemistry and all of these things. Do you know what happened? Historians said two things broke the back of science in Islam. Remember, knowledge is not ilmi, Islami or ghair Islami. It's not this. Divide ilm, divide knowledge into either qurbatan ilallah or not. Knowledge either takes me closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or not. That same biology textbook can take me closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When I think that who created this cell? Who created this? Who created this human body? It is all a game of lenses. If I wear red glasses, I see a red world. If I wear green glasses, I see a green world. If I wear godly glasses, I see a godly world. If I wear atheistic glasses, I see an atheistic world. Two scientists in the same laboratory, one person says that I have no belief in God because of this science, the other one says this science takes me straight to God. What happened in the history of Islam? The first fatwa, we are told, Islam was on the rise, 800 to 1100 AD. Sciences, mathematics, physics, chemistry, everything's coming out of the Islamic world. One fatwa broke the back of Islam the first time. They say it's either Ghazali or Ghazali was put pressure by Nizam al-Mulk. Not the Hyderabad one, huh? Is that Nizam al-Mulk from Persia? He says, I don't want people educated. I don't want people learning. He says, give the fatwa. What was the fatwa? The fatwa was the mathematics is the work of the devil. This graph of Islam is increasing. That fatwa comes, it drops. That was the first back-breaking fatwa of Islam. What was the second one? As time progressed, Islam and the Muslim world were progressing. Europe was in the Dark Ages. It was the medieval times, Dark Ages. One invention that came in the Western world changed everything. Gutenberg, in the 15th century, invents the printing press. The printing press at that time was like the internet of today. Knowledge, before the printing press of Gutenberg, knowledge used to be written on by scribes, by hand. Gutenberg invents the printing press, and knowledge begins to spread throughout Europe like wildfire. Like wildfire. This same printing press comes to the Ottomans, we're told. Remember I said, US, it's about to be China, world power. Right now it's US, before Great Britain, before that, Ottoman Empire. They brought these same Gutenberg printing presses to the Ottomans. The Ottomans said, these are going to put our people out of work, our scribes out of work. But what they were more concerned with, they didn't want the general population to become educated. Because when the general population becomes educated, they topple and overturn the tyrants. That's the power of knowledge. They said, let's get rid of all of these printing presses. What happened? The Muslim empire declined. Europe went on rapid. And we've never recovered since. You and I must be at the forefront of science and technology. We must be. As followers of the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. Today, what's happening? Why is science coming as a sort of argument or a zidd to religion? An opposite to religion. I'll tell you exactly why. The ancient Greeks, they used to teach two subjects in their schools. One was called logos, the other was called mythos. Logos had to do with all those things that we would call logical. The idea, mathematics, geometry, trigonometry, all the things that make buildings, all the things that make society. And mythos had to do with those things that people could not explain, that people didn't understand. For example, why do we go through sorrow and suffering? Why do we die? What happens when we die? What happens in the hereafter? Logos could not give them answers for that. They had mythos or mythos. As time progressed, logos in the 19th century, 18th century developed so rapidly that it became, the narrative became, we no longer need religion. And you're hearing this narrative a lot today. What do I need religion for? If you don't believe me, ask some people around you who've grown up here, who were born and raised here. By the way, side note, In the Western Hemisphere of all developed countries, America is the most religious developed country in the Western Hemisphere by far. Europe is far more atheistic than America. And even in America, we are facing big challenges. What challenges are we facing in America? Notre Dame University, very renowned institution, top 25 institution in America. They did the largest study on young people and religion in America. What is it that young people and their relationship to faith? Remember, we swim in the same ocean. We have this, our environment has an impact on us. Whether you realize it or whether you don't, it has an impact. There are beautiful aspects of society. There are challenges with respect to society. 2,000 young people were studied. This is a huge sample. 30 is a decent sample in statistics. This is a 2,000 people sample. The largest study of young people and religion in America done at Notre Dame University. They found 3 things with respect to young people in America and their religious preoccupations. They said, number 1, young people in America, Muslims, Jews, Christians, people of faith, young people in America, they are not able to articulately speak about their religious beliefs. They don't know what they believe. They say, okay, I believe in God, but I don't know the tenets of my faith. The example would be, I don't know Usuluddin, I don't know Furuuddin, I don't know these things, but I know I believe in God. They don't know and they are not able to speak adequately about their faith. This is what the data show. Number 1. Number 2, they found that for most young Americans, religion is just not that important. It's not a priority. It's not even first, second, or third on the list. It's down the list. And third, they said that young Americans, in terms of religion, they don't follow the religion that you and I think. They follow another form of religion called moralistic therapeutic deism. What's moralistic therapeutic deism? Moralistic means about good and bad. And I know what's good and bad. Therapeutic, it's a God that's available on demand. When I need God, He's there. If I'm having a hard time, I pray, God, are you there? Help me out. But when I'm having a good time, life's good, I forget about God. And deism is the idea that it's a God. That means that the God that young people in America believe in is very different than the God that their parents believed in and their grandparents believed in. This is what the data is showing from Notre Dame University. Therefore, you and I need to be very vigilant. We are telling our young generation, become very well educated, become doctors, lawyers, engineers, and it's beautiful. But what they're telling me is that the religious dialogue is not keeping up. Science is going somewhere else. Religion is still living back in the 1500s. And we are having this gap, and this gap is getting bigger. And somebody needs to address this gap. Otherwise, we're going to lose another generation. This is a sobering reality we have to deal with. It's happening left, right, and center. We need to see how can we develop this. Karen Armstrong, I don't know if you've heard, she's a writer on religion. She's written on Buddhism, Christianity, Islam, especially the Judaic, Christian, Muslim, Abrahamic faiths. She's written dozens of books, and they're voluminous books, and they're very beautiful books. She's been invited to many conferences. Karen Armstrong was asked, as an outsider, how will Islam go back to its golden era? How will Islam go back to that period where Islam was giving the world sciences and math and all of the great accomplishments? How will it go back? She gave an interesting response. She said, it will not happen until you send your best minds to mullah school. It will not happen until you send your best minds to your Islamic institutions. You know, we sometimes think this is only in our department. This is a true story. At Al-Azhar University, you know, Al-Azhar in Cairo, it used to be called Al-Zahra University. It was established by Shias, Ismaili Shias, the Nazaris. At that time, it was established by the Shias. It was called Al-Zahra University. Salahuddin Ayyubi from the Crusades, he conquered it, he changed it to Al-Azhar. Anyways, it's the seat of knowledge in the Sunni Muslim world. There was a student who was admitted into that school. He was blind, visually impaired. He was blind. Through more miracle and the mu'jiz of the Quran, he was studying the Quran, he gained his sight back. As soon as he gained his sight back, his father came and he said, I'm removing him from the school. The principal said, why are you removing him from the school? He says, I want to take him and put him in med school. The principal raised his hand and he said, Ya Allah, do not cure any of our students because we won't have any students anymore. The idea was, if I can do something that has material benefit, that has economic benefit, if I can become a doctor or an engineer, I do it. If I can't, I find this other thing. Why? Alhamdulillah, a few people are going and making this sacrifice. Our job is to take care of those people. You know, the average salary in America, I speak from data, I come from a data science background. The average salary of a priest and an imam in America is $35,000. My data is old, a few years old. It must be maybe a bit more now. The average salary for a rabbi in America is $135,000, 100 grand more. They give more, they expect more. That's why when many of these issues arise, they get better answers on these issues. We have people who are being forced, many of our scholars are being forced to talk about issues like evolution, and they don't even know what evolution says. The narrative on evolution, Darwinian evolution that we've gotten is from the Christian narrative. People say evolution says we came from apes. Evolution does not say that we came from apes. That's not what evolution says. That's not what evolution says. That's the Christian narrative. If you don't believe me, read the history. The Huxley-Wilberforce debates that happened at Oxford University in 1850, after Darwin published The Origin of Species. After Darwin published The Origin of Species, there was a big debate that happened at Oxford University. And the debate was between Huxley and Wilberforce. Wilberforce was a big priest. He knew how to speak. The trivium. In liberal arts institutions, they used to teach, they still teach the trivium. The trivium are 3 subjects: logic, grammar, and rhetoric. If you study these, you can control the world. The idea of liberal arts, where does liberal arts come from? Liberal meaning those arts that free your mind. They unshackle you. He knew how to speak, Wilberforce. The other person on the other side was a man named Huxley. Huxley was a biologist. The debate started. Huxley knew how to control the crowd. The priest knew how to control the crowd. He came forward and said, Mr. Huxley, are you saying that your grandmother was a descendant of apes? Everyone started laughing. Huxley was a smart man. He looked right back at Wilberforce. The biologist looked right back at the priest and he said, Mr. Wilberforce, if you are asking me if I would rather that my grandmother came from apes, or that I use my talent of my tongue to confuse the people, I would rather that my grandmother came from apes. Meaning, he was pointing out that Wilberforce was completely creating a straw man argument. He was changing the discussion because Darwinian evolution never said that human beings came from apes. What Darwinian evolution said was it's possible that human beings and apes had a common ancestor hundreds of thousands of years ago, which is very different than saying apes than humans. They're saying it's possible that hundreds of thousands of years ago, apes and humans had a common ancestor. And it's very possible that this arises. Many of our youth ask these questions. Why? These questions don't get addressed. Who's there to address these questions? Because I tell you, look at this. How long ago did Rasulullah live? 1400 years ago? How long ago did Isa live? 2019 years ago? How long ago did Musa live? 5,000 years ago? Say 6,000 years ago? How long ago did Nuh alayhi salam live? Noah? 7, 8? How long ago did Adam live? How many years ago? Let's say maximum 15,000? 16,000? 20,000? What's the problem with this for a young person who's going to school? Who's going through elementary, middle school, high school? What's the problem? College? We have fossil evidence that is hundreds of thousands of years old of humans. Fossil. I mentioned, archaeologists look at fossil evidence. So the young mind is saying Islam's timeline only goes back 15, 20,000 years. But we have evidence that goes way far back. The reason is that these questions arise is that these issues were never addressed. Islam has given us the answers. Our Ahlul Bayt have given us the answers. We're told our fifth Imam, Imam Baqir salawatullah wa salamu alayhi, he was asked, Yabna Rasulullah, were there worlds before our world? And were there Adams before our Adam? Meaning, were there worlds that existed before our world? And were there Adams, meaning prophets for those as well? Imam said, before our Adam, before our world, there were alf worlds. Alf meaning thousand. At that time, there was no million. The top level number you could get to in Arabic was 1,000. He said, before our world, there were 1 million worlds. And each of them had their own Adam. But these answers never get to our young minds. Furthermore, someone came to Amir al-Mu'mineen, Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib, salawatullah wa salamu alayhi wa sallam. He said, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala create anyone before Adam? It's a good question. Did Allah create anyone before Adam? He said, yes. Amir al-Mu'mineen says, yes, Allah created 4 things before Adam. He says, what? He says, first Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the first thing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created was the nur of Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. The nur of the Ahlul Bayt. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the jinn and the angels, the malaika. He created the jinn and the angels. The nur of the Ahlul Bayt, the jinn, the angels. And fourth, He created something called nasnas. He said, Amir al-Mu'mineen, what's nasnas? Imam looked back at it and he said, this was a creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that looked like us, but was not given aql, was not given reason. This would align with what we may call cavemen, for example. Or Homo erectus. We are Homo sapiens. Before us, Homo erectus, the standing man that was now endowed. But these answers many a times don't reach our next generation. So they're thinking that Islam is here, science is here, Islam's here, Islam and science is here. There's such a big gap, I don't even want to deal with it. Whereas the answers are there. But we haven't taken the time to give those answers. That are answers that are to the satisfaction of the question, the person who's asking the question. Not the person who's giving the reply. You know what used to happen when we were growing up? You go to the Maulana, you ask a question, what's the proof of God? What's the need for religion? How do I know my religion is the right religion? You ask these big questions. Maulana answers the question, and we have to respect all of our ulama, by the way. I'm not giving any type of blanket statement. The sacrifices of our ulama cannot be undermined. I mentioned to you, Shaheed al-Sadr, Shaheed al-Salis, Shaheed al-Sani, Shaheed al-Awwal, all of these scholars have given huge sacrifices. But they come from a different time and space. So the Maulana, for example, with honest sincerity, he's not trying to do anything harmful. He says the proof of the God is, what is? It is this old lady, she was sitting and she had a chakki, a mill. Chakki, like grounding, flour mill. And she said that, the mill, as long as I'm moving the mill is moving. There must be somebody who is controlling this earth. That may work for one type of intellect. That may work for one individual. But the person who lives in a statistical, data-driven university environment, they'll say, that's a little too simplistic for me. I need some more evidence. I need some more proof. I need to understand what you're saying. I need more depth. And this is the truth. Never forget this quote. Francis Bacon, the inventor of the scientific method. You know the scientific method? When you go in science, you do the hypothesis, the testing, you draw a conclusion. Francis Bacon said, a little bit of knowledge inclines a man to atheism. Depth of knowledge leads a man to God. Develop depth of knowledge. That's what we're looking for. That's what we're striving for. I tell you, the foundational element. What is the topic of the Quran? According to scholars, according to many people who have studied, if they could sum up the topic of the Quran in one word, they would say it's Tawheed. The belief in the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, did they ever force anyone to follow them for their own sake? They always told people, follow us, so we take you, we hold your hand, and we take you to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It was never for their own zat. It was so that we get qurbat, closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Therefore, we must look at this and understand this concept so that we can answer it and give answers to our next generation. There's philosophical arguments. I'm leaving the philosophy. I'm giving you science. Stephen Hawking, in his book, A Brief History of Time, a very famous physicist who's passed away just a couple of years ago. Stephen Hawking, he gives all the data and he crunches all the numbers on the Big Bang Theory. You know the Big Bang Theory? The start of the universe roughly 14 billion years ago. By the way, I don't know if you know. Do you know who the founder of the Big Bang Theory was? His name was Lemaitre. He was a Belgian priest. I thought the Big Bang Theory is against Islam, it's against religion, it's against God. The person who came up with the theory was a priest. And he didn't live very long ago. He lived in the 20th century. You can see him. He was a physicist. And you can see him wearing his garb, his priest outfit as well. Meaning, when he devised the Big Bang Theory, he was not saying this is against God. By the way, it's a fallacy that they tell you that most scientists are atheists. It's not true. Isaac Newton, the founder of Newtonian mechanics, the founder of calculus with Leibniz, he wrote extensively about science. But what they don't tell you is he wrote extensively about God. He was a mawahid. He believed in one God. To the extent that at that time, in order to be a professor at Cambridge University, where he was the Lucasian chair, the same chair that Stephen Hawking had was once held by Isaac Newton. Isaac Newton said that I do not believe in the Trinity because Jesus never said that there is a Father, a Son, Holy Ghost. He says, I believe in one God. He got special exemption to be a professor there. He wrote adamantly about God, but people will never tell you that. You need to be very careful of the news. Sociologists have said that the news is one thing that makes us unhappy in societies. There's a benefit of news. News has a benefit. But do you know what sociologists say why the news is challenging? Because it shows us the outliers. It shows us the anomalies of society, and we think they're the norms. So if I see a crime, robbery, and I see that on the news, I think all of my neighbors are robbers or criminals. It's an anomaly. It's an outlier in the data set. And so we need to be very careful of the news. One time, for example, there's one study that may show that a little bit of wine or alcohol is good for someone. That's all over the news. But when I talk to doctors, they tell me, they won't tell you about the 2,000 other studies that say alcohol is harmful for you. This one, it gets on the news. The other ones never make it to the news. Be very careful of the news and where you get it. And make sure it's authentic. Understand where the agendas are behind the scenes. We must understand where our information, where our knowledge is coming from. As followers of the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, Lemaitre, Isaac Newton believed adamantly of God. Albert Einstein. Einstein said that God is not playing dice with the universe. He believed in God. You go Francis Bacon, go down the list. But today the environment has become, it's easier for me to be a professor, to be an academic, if I'm atheist, as opposed to being a believer. If I go to the university here or anywhere, I go to UF, I go to UCF, I go to Emory, I go to whatever university, Harvard. If I want to be the chairman of the Department of Biology, and I'm someone who adamantly believes in God, or I'm someone who doesn't believe in God publicly, who's going to get the job? The atheist is going to get the job, because the environment is leading towards that. By the way, I want to give one very, very important point here. The theory of atheism, for my young ones, the theory of atheism, the theory of evolution, of Darwinism, Darwinian evolution, is exactly that. It's a theory, it's not a law. The final stage in science is a law. The theory is a theory. A theory may have gaps. A theory may have holes. What is one of the big challenges or holes? We accept the theory of evolution. وَجَعَلْنَا مِنَ الْمَاءِ كُلَّ شَيْءٍ حَيٍّ, the Quran says that we created everything from water. The theory of evolution says everything started first from water. We don't deny. There's no verse in the Quran that denies the theory of evolution. But what we're saying is that what is the definition of evolution? If evolution means that I live close to the equator where the sun is very strong, over generations my skin tone can become darker, we accept, no problem. But if evolution says that one species becomes another, I need more evidence. Because one of the biggest gaps and one of the biggest holes in the theory of evolution today is the lack of paleontological evidence for the theory. You know what paleontological means? Fossil evidence. The lack of fossil evidence. Of what in particular? The lack of fossil evidence for intermediate phases. Meaning, the theory says it's possible that sea creatures became land creatures, and land creatures became birds and flying creatures.
But what's the problem with that? We have evidence that there are fossils of water life, water animals, aquatic animals. We have evidence of land animals. We have evidence of birds. But we don't have evidence of intermediate phases. We don't have evidence of a half fish and a half land creature. We don't have this. We don't have evidence of a half land creature, half flying creature. You would expect that the fossil evidence would show that this exists. Therefore, as followers of Islam, we believe the theory, there's nothing that contradicts, but it's not a law yet. That means it may change. It may stay the same. 100 years ago, the science said we live in an ether. We live in an ether. We're walking around in an ether. It's around us. Today, science says that's not true. There's magnitudes, there are gravitational waves. All of this has changed. So we need to be very careful. 100 years ago, there were books on the written Quranic tafasirs of the Quran. They said, this is what the Quran says 200 years ago. This is what the Quran says. This is what modern science says. Therefore, this is why the Quran is right. But you know what happened? Fast forward 200 years, all of the science changed. And it undermined the spirituality of the book. Therefore, it's an open door. Science changes. We need to understand this. With respect to what Stephen Hawking said, I can tell you all the data about the Big Bang Theory, but you won't understand it. He said, let me give you an example. Here are all the numbers. Let me give you the example. How did this universe come into being? He said, the way this universe came into being, the example is as if I put a bunch of monkeys, apes into a room. I put the apes into a room, and I put a typewriter in the room. You know a typewriter? If you don't remember typewriter, use a keyboard. For those who remember typewriter, typewriter in the room, bunch of apes in the room. I put them in the room, I put the typewriter in the room. After some time, those monkeys, they begin to type. They type. And what they produce is not a word, not a sentence, not a paragraph, not even a letter. It is an entire poem of Shakespeare. That's what Stephen Hawking said. It's like these monkeys accidentally produced the poetry of Shakespeare, a sonnet of Shakespeare. Professor Schroeder, who was a physicist who believed in God, he read this and he said, very well, Mr. Stephen Hawking, very interesting. You're saying that the analogy of this universe coming out of chance is like monkeys on a typewriter? Let's crunch the numbers. He said the British Council of Arts has already done a study on this. They put monkeys into a room and they left them there for 1 month. And they put a typewriter in the room. And they said, let's see what the output is. They put the monkeys in the room, they left the typewriter there. The researchers said, for several days the monkeys didn't go near the typewriter. After a few days, they began to use the typewriter like a toilet. Their words, not mine. After some days, they began to type on the typewriter. They started pressing 1 or 2 buttons. After 1 month, they produced 50 pages of output. Now, Mr. Schroeder, the other physicist, wanted to look at what is the possibility of this happening. What's the shortest word in the English language? A? I? These two? A or I? Shortest words in the English language. The requirement is before the A and after the A, before the I and after the I, you have to have a space. If you don't have a space, it's not a word. Therefore, they began to crunch the numbers. At the same time, Dr. Schroeder was looking at what is the probability of the universe coming out of nowhere and these apes producing the poetry of Shakespeare. Now, keep this in mind. Be very careful. I'm about to spend some numbers. If you need to write this down, write it down. In mathematics, there's a concept called statistical zero. Statistical zero is 1 over 10 raised to the 50 power. That is easily put 0.0 followed by 50 zeros. 0.0 followed by 50 zeros. If the number is that small, it is as if it is negligible. It is as if it's 0. You might as well say it's 0. Professor Schroeder, he looked at a particular poem of the sonnets of Shakespeare. Bear with me here, very important concept. He said, let me take one of the sonnets of Shakespeare. Each one has 14 lines. He said, he took the one, shall I compare thee to a summer? And he said, how many words are in this poem? He said, in this poem, there are 488 words. He said, how many letters are in the English language? He said, in the English language, there are 26 letters in the alphabet. He took 26 and he raised it to the 488th power. Remember this. Schroeder then looked at how many words did those monkeys produce in the lab in the British Council of Arts? 50 pages, 1 month. They must have produced some poetry. He looked at it and he found that those monkeys in 1 month, 50 pages, they did not produce a single word in the English language. Not an A, not an I, nothing. It was all gibberish. And then he crunched the numbers. 26 raised to the 488th power. When you convert it to base 10, that becomes 10 raised to the 690th power. 1 over 10 raised to the 690th power is 0.0 followed by 690 zeros. The probability of this universe coming out of nowhere is so small that no scientist worth their weight would ever bet on this. But they don't tell you those numbers. And this is what the media doesn't tell you. Anthony Flew, never forget this name. Anybody becomes an atheist, somebody who believed in God, they no longer believe in God, they're always in the media. One person who changed his view, changed his mind, nobody tells you. Anthony Flew was the biggest atheist of the last 100 years. Biggest atheist. He denied God till his last moments. 2-3 years before he died, he changed his mind. He started believing in God. His followers said, we were atheists because of you. We stopped believing in God because of you. Why did you change your mind? He said two things. Two things do not allow me to stay an atheist. Remember these. He said the first was the response of Dr. Schroeder to Stephen Hawking, the one I just mentioned to you about the apes. He said that made it clear to me that this universe cannot come by chance. Number one. He said the other and the more important thing that changed my perspective about whether God exists or not were 3 letters. Deoxyribonucleic acid, DNA. DNA does not allow me to deny the existence of God. I said, why? He said, you know, DNA, it has all of our genetic information in it. It's encoded in it. Adenine, guanine, cytosine. You know this better than I do. All of that information is encoded into our genetic DNA so that we become who we are. Our skin color, our hair color, our mind, our behavior, it all comes from there. He says, do you know how much data is encoded in DNA? I'll give you the short answer. I won't crunch the numbers. I won't bother you with the numbers. Just know this. We don't, with all this data science, artificial intelligence in our modern era, we don't have that much data in our world today. We're not scheduled to hit that number until 2025, 6 years out. That's how much information, terabytes, are encoded in each one of our DNAs. Anthony Flew says that information is encoded in human DNA. That is programmed into human DNA. Whenever you see something that has been programmed, no, there is a programmer. That programmer is God. And he wrote a very famous book that you can now get. It's called There Is a God. And on the cover it says, there is no God. He crosses out no. And he says, there is a God. But they'll never tell you about this. The answers are there. Someone came, and I'm concluding. Abu Shakir comes to our 6th Imam. He says, Yabna Rasulillah, what is the dalil? What is the proof? What is the proof of the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? A young child was passing by. He had an egg in his hand. An egg. Imam took the egg from the child. He took the egg. He said, Abu Shakir, look at this. What if I told you, Abu Shakir, that there was a fortress, and inside that fortress was a thin film, and inside that thin film was molten silver, liquid silver. And what if I told you inside that liquid silver was liquid gold? And what if I told you the liquid gold does not mix with the liquid silver? And if I shake it, they don't mix. And what if I tell you that no one has gone inside and no one has come outside of it? And what if I told you in some moments that something will come out of this fortress? and it will have wings, and it will have feathers, and it will have nostrils, and it will have all of these things, yet there was no one there to design it, Abu Shakir? Abu Shakir said, Yabna Rasulullah, today I understood. Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen said, someone asked Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen, what's the dalil of the existence of God? He said that the people, when they walk by in the sand, and when the animals walk by in the sand, their traces give evidence that somebody has walked by here. Does this universe not give you evidence that there was someone who created it? That there was someone who fashioned it? A man comes to Amir al-Mu'mineen, he says, Ya Ali, you believe that there is akhirah. You believe there is a hereafter. You believe that when you die, there is a world afterwards. What if you die and there's nothing? What if you die and there's no akhirah, there's no kitab, hisab, there's nothing? Amir al-Mu'mineen looks at him, he says, if I die and there's nothing in the akhirah, I will still be satisfied with my life. I didn't cheat anyone. I didn't lie to anyone. I was a good human being. I served humanity. I didn't do anything wrong. But he looked right back at him. If tomorrow you die and there is hisab and there is kitab and there is akhirah, what will you do? He had no answer. This is what they call Pascal's wager. Blaise Pascal, the inventor of the calculator. Not the modern version, the original version. He said, if you are to decide between whether there is a hereafter or not, it is better that you assume there is a hereafter. Because otherwise you face eternal damnation. We're told there's another moment in time. The Ahlul Bayt gave responses. Our 8th Imam, in a beautiful tradition, says, someone asked the 8th Imam, said, Yabna Rasulullah, why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala create so many different creatures? You know, we're finding new species every day. You know, some people are going and saying, let's go to Mars. It's good. Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, SpaceX, the likes Blue Origin. There's other people such as Ray Dalio, the most successful hedge fund manager in the world. He says, we need to go into the oceans because we don't even know what's in our own planet. Every day we're finding new species in the ocean. Every day we're finding new species in the Amazon. You know the Amazon that was on fire? That Amazon, we're finding new species every single day. Somebody asked the Imam, he said, Yabna Rasulullah, why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala create so many different types of birds, so many different types of fish, so many different types of creatures? He said that so on Yawmul Qiyamah, on the day of judgment, no one says to Allah, I thought of something that you could not think of. That we don't even know the things that exist, that Allah has fashioned. The most difficult, for my youth, the most difficult thing for an atheist to answer is the fine-tuning argument of the universe. What I explained before, somebody fashioned this universe. That entity that fashioned and created this universe is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is what the Quran tells us. In it are a sign for those who reflect. Over 700 verses of the Quran tell us tafakkur and tadabbur, contemplate, reflect. But this is for others. For you and I, the dalil and the proof. We don't need more proof than the existence of Imam al-Hussein. For you and I, wujood haqq ke liye, for the existence of Allah, Aba Abdullah is enough. Have we read about Abdullah on the plains of Arafah, extemporaneously, off the cuff, fil badi, as you and I say? He goes onto the plains of Arafah and he starts to recite Dua Arafah. And Allahu Akbar. Have I read Dua Arafah? It is as if the Imam is giving a complete anatomical study of the human being. He says, Oh Allah, by the matrices of my teeth, and the jaw which connects to the socket, and the esophagus, and the aorta, and the rib cages, and every detail of the human body. Aba Abdullah proves us the existence of God. I'm concluding. I've taken much of your time. Give the next few moments to the Ahlul Bayt. In particular, give the next few moments to the daughter of Imam al-Hussein. Allahu Akbar. We are told on the night of Sham al-Ghariban, after all the tragedy, after all the calamity that has happened, we are told some water comes to the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. When this water comes to the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, we are told Sayyidah Zainab, she begins to put the water in glasses for the children. When she puts puts the water into the glasses. She takes the water and then she gives it. She takes it to a 4-year-old, Bibi Sakina. Bibi Sakina looks at the water. She says, my auntie Zainab, Pupi Amma, why did you give me this water first? At that point in time, we are told Sayyida Zainab says that my child, Sakina, I gave you the water because you are the youngest one. Bibi Sakina went into the maqtal. She went in one direction. Bibi Zainab said, Sakina, where are you going? Sakina said, my aunt Zainab, you said the youngest get water. My 6-month-old brother Ali Asghar, he didn't get any water. My 6-month-old brother didn't get any water. I'm going to give him water. Ajrukum ala Allah. There is another narration I have heard from the ulama of Karbala. They narrate this. They say when Bibi Zainab took the water, she gave it to Bibi Sakina. When Bibi Sakina got the water, she said, my aunt Zainab, why did you give me this water first? Bibi Zainab said that I gave you this water because you were the most thirsty. Sakina went into the maqtal. She went a different direction. Bibi Zainab said, Sakina, where are you going? Sakina got to one body that did not have a head. And she said a line that breaks the heart. She said, Baba, I brought you water. Baba, you were so thirsty. I finally got you water to give you. Tell me, where is my uncle Abu Fadl al-Abbas? I will go give him water. Sallallahu alayka ya Rasulullah. Sallallahu alayka ya Amir al-Mu'minin. Sallallahu alayki ya Fatimah al-Zahra, Sayyidat al-Nisa al-Alamin. صلى الله عليك يا حسن المجتبى. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. معتم حسين يا حسين يا حسين.
I'd like to request everyone goes outside for the candlelight vigil organized by JICs to remember the martyrs of Karbala.
तमाम मोमिन से इल्तिमास से बाहर ले जाएं, वहां पर मातम करेंगे.
گئے شام کے زنداں میں اندھیرے بابا، کھا گئے شام کے زنداں میں اندھیرے بابا، کھا گئے شام کے زنداں میں اندھیرے بابا۔ کس کو کہتے ہیں یتیمی یہ سنا تھا میں نے، آپ کے بعد یہ احساس ہوا ہے بابا، کھا گئے شام کے زنداں میں اندھیرے بابا، کھا گئے شام کے زنداں میں اندھیرے بابا۔ آپ کے بعد یتیمی کی سزا پائی ہے، اتنی تنہا ہوں کہ سایہ ہے نہ پرچھائی ہے، رات رو رو کے گزرتی ہے تو دن ماتم میں، قید خانے میں یوں ہی سال کٹا ہے بابا، کھا گئے شام کے زنداں میں اندھیرے بابا، کھا گئے شام کے زنداں میں اندھیرے بابا۔ زندگی میری دکھوں سے ہے عبارت بابا، کیسے قسمت نے دکھائی ہے مصیبت بابا، میں جو روتی ہوں تو لگتے ہیں تماچے بابا، آپ کی یاد میں رونا بھی سزا ہے بابا، کھا گئے شام کے زنداں میں اندھیرے بابا، کھا گئے شام کے زنداں میں اندھیرے بابا۔
السلام عليك يا رسول الله المصطفى محمد بن عبد الله، السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين المرتضى علي بن أبي طالب، السلام عليك يا فاطمة بنت محمد الزهراء سيدة النساء العالمين، السلام عليك يا حسن بن علي المجتبى، السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله الحسين الشهيد، السلام عليك يا أبا الفضل العباس بن أمير المؤمنين، السلام عليك يا شهداء كربلاء وسيران كربلاء ورحمة الله وبركاته، السلام عليك يا علي بن الحسين الزين العابدين، السلام عليك يا محمد بن علي الباقر، السلام عليك يا جعفر بن محمد الصادق، السلام عليك يا موسى بن جعفر القاظم، السلام عليك يا علي بن موسى الرضا، السلام عليك يا محمد بن علي الجواد، السلام عليك يا علي بن محمد الهادي، السلام عليك يا حسن بن علي العسكري، السلام عليك يا إمام صاحب العصر والزمان، الأمان الأمان الأمان، السلام عليك يا شريك القرآن، السلام عليك يا إمام الإنس والجان، أجل الله تعالى فرجه وساحر الله مخرجه، السلام عليك يا سيدي ابن الزهراء ورحمة الله وبركاته۔
مومن و مومنات ایک سورہ فاتحہ کی درخواست ہے نور علی ولد رمضان علی اور کل مومن اور مومنات کے لیے، اور مومن و مومنات یہ بھی اعلان سماعت فرماتے جائیں کہ یہ مومنات اعلان سماعت فرما لیں کہ زرین رضوی صاحبہ کے گھر پر ایک مجلس منعقد ہو رہی جو کہ کل 3 بجے شروع ہوگی، اور تمام مومنات سے شرکت کی درخواست